It was the middle of the night when I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. As I reached the doorway, I paused and hid behind the wall. Abba was there again, unwrapping a small paper packet and mixing something into a glass of milk. It was a strange greenish powder that instantly changed the color of the milk. Then, without wasting a second, Abba drank the entire glass and walked back to his room. This had been happening for several weeks. Every other night, I'd secretly watch him prepare and drink that same milk. And each time, I knew exactly what would follow, the sounds I would hear throughout the night. A faint, knowing smile formed on my lips. I was well aware of how much Abba loved me, and after drinking that special milk, his love would always overflow. That's why, deep into the night, I'd hear Ami's muffled voice echoing in the silence. The house was small, so every little sound became clear in the stillness of the night. I would lie restlessly on my bed, tossing and turning. I was a 15-year-old girl, young but curious. At that age, one's mind naturally begins to wonder about the relationships between husband and wife. And those late-night sounds only fed my curiosity, stirring unfamiliar feelings inside me. Sometimes I'd wonder what was happening inside their room. Sometimes I'd think about how deeply Abba loved Ami, even at this stage in life. And sometimes I'd find myself asking, what is that powder Abba drinks that makes Ami's voice tremble until dawn? These were the questions that had been circling in my mind for the last few months, with no answers. But slowly, those unanswered questions began turning into secret desires. I started dreaming about married life, imagining that one day, my own husband would be just as madly in love with me as Abba was with Ami. Even now, I lay on my charpai listening to Ami's muffled sobs. Please. Her voice made me blush deeply, my cheeks turning crimson in the dark. The feelings inside me stirred again. Sleep had left my eyes. I tossed from side to side, unable to stay still. It felt like Abba could never resist Ami. His love for her was just too deep. By the time Fajr approached, Ami came out of her room, leaning against the wall for support. Slowly, carefully, she made her way to the washroom. I knew what came next. She would take a bath and offer her prayer, just like every other time. I pulled the sheet over my face, pretending to be asleep so she wouldn't realize I was awake. I didn't have a room of my own. I slept out in the veranda. Maybe that's why I was always aware of everything happening around me. A long while passed before Ami came out of the bathroom. Her long golden hair was dripping wet, clinging to her clothes. Her dress was soaked. I knew she had finished her bath. She quietly returned to her room, and only then was I finally able to fall asleep. Because now I knew even Ami would be able to rest. The next morning at breakfast, I noticed Abba's face, flushed, tired, with dark circles under his eyes. He looked exhausted. Ami looked no different. She was struggling just to stand up straight as she served us breakfast. At one point, she held her back with one hand, clearly in pain. At this stage in life, perhaps it had become difficult for Ami to bear Abba's intense emotions every single night. I glanced at Ami's beautiful face and found myself captivated. Her beauty often left me spellbound, even as her complexion had gradually begun to pale with time. Still, she remained stunning, and maybe that very beauty was what made it so hard for Abba to control himself. My mother had married Abba out of love. She was incredibly beautiful. They had lived in the same neighborhood once. Abba had fallen hopelessly for her, and despite their family's opposition, they got married. When Abba's family found out, no one accepted their union. Ami's family, on the other hand, were well-educated, refined people, very different from Abba's. That's why her family rejected the marriage outright. Eventually, Abba brought Ami to a new city, far from everything familiar. It was here that I was born. As I grew older, I began to realize how often Ami seemed sad. She would miss her family deeply. Sometimes she'd say, I wish I hadn't hurt my parents. I wish I had never stepped out of their home. She longed for them deeply. But when she was with me, she would return to her usual self, warm and gentle. And just like that, I continued to grow. I had taken after her completely. Her beauty had passed on to me. People would often be enchanted by the way I looked. Even Ami at her age was still so graceful and radiant that one could hardly believe she was the mother of a 15-year-old daughter like me. Perhaps that's why Abba was still so madly in love with her. He never let her go anywhere alone. He always stayed close to her. Every evening after work, he would come home and take her into their room. But lately, something strange had become routine. Abba would often bring large quantities of milk at night, heat it himself in the kitchen, add something mysterious to it, and then drink it all alone. And when he went into the room afterward, I would hear sounds, whispers, sighs, gasps that made my heart race. Their love had become a kind of example to me. Despite their age, Abba never neglected Ami. He gave her more time and attention than he ever gave to me, but sometimes I could see uneasiness in Ami's expressions. Whenever Abba held her hand and tried to lead her to their room, Ami's face would pale. I even heard her whisper once, "The girl is growing up now. Please be a little more mindful. Not everything should happen in front of her." But Abba would say loudly, "She's our daughter. She should know how much her parents love each other." And then I would look away, embarrassed, my eyes fixed to the floor. Soon after, the usual night sounds would return. Those muffled sighs, stifled cries, soft murmurs, and they would awaken strange emotions in me. My thoughts would spiral, my body tense. I couldn't sleep. That year, I passed my 10th grade exams. When it was time to enroll in college, Abba outright refused. "There's no need for you to go out of the house unnecessarily," he said. "As far as I'm concerned, your education is complete." His words broke me. I wanted to study. I wanted to move forward in life. Ami, too, had the same wish for me. But Abba had suddenly turned against the idea of me continuing my education. When I insisted, when I argued with all my heart, he finally said something strange, something that shook me. He said, "I don't want you to end up like your mother, running away from home for love." "So that one day you don't run off with someone too," Abba had said. His words hit Ami hard. I could see her face change immediately, and I too was stunned. Ami had left everything behind out of love for Abba. And now he was twisting that love into something shameful, as if she had committed a grave sin by marrying him. Ami quietly got up and went into her room without saying a word. Abba, meanwhile, looked at me with stern eyes and said clearly, "From now on, focus on household responsibilities. I'll arrange your marriage soon. Don't end up disgracing me." Hearing that, I lowered my gaze, ashamed. I didn't know what kind of thoughts Abba harbored about me. He then walked away and closed his room door, leaving me alone in a spiral of confusion. I couldn't help but wonder, had Ami made a mistake by marrying him against her family's wishes? Was he judging me by the same standards he once judged her? But that night, as Abba drank his usual glass of milk and headed into the room, those thoughts vanished from my mind. Abba still loved Ami deeply. Maybe he was just afraid of the social shame that came with a runaway marriage. Maybe he didn't want me to go through the consequences he had faced. I tried to understand him, but that night I did something I shouldn't have. After Abba went into the room, I couldn't hold back my curiosity. I pressed my ear against their bedroom door. I heard Ami's trembling voice. "Please, enough now. How long do I have to bear all this? At least think about my age. I know I'm still beautiful, but is that my fault?" And Abba replied in a deep, intense tone, "That is your fault. You're too beautiful. That's why I can't leave you alone." After that, Ami's muffled sobs began. I could hear her whispering again and again, "Please, enough." I felt like my face was burning. Shame overwhelmed me, not just because of what I heard, but because I had been listening in at all. I quickly went back to my charpai and lay down, heart pounding. I knew what I had done was wrong, deeply wrong. As a daughter, I should never have eavesdropped on my parents, but those whispers, their love, it was all so confusing to me. That night, I stayed awake thinking about their relationship. The next morning, when Ami came out of the room, I noticed something that startled me, tiny bluish marks on her neck. I panicked and asked her, "Ami, what happened to your neck?" She quickly pulled her dupatta up and began her chores as if nothing had happened. She didn't answer my question. I let it go. Later that day, after I finished all the household work, I went over to my friend Layla's house. Ami never stopped me from visiting her. While there, I noticed something strange, similar marks on Layla's Bobby's neck. I couldn't stop myself. Nervously, I whispered, "Layla, what happened to your Bobby's neck?" Layla, who lived in a joint family and wasn't nearly as naive as I was, giggled, smacked my forehead lightly, and said, "Have some shame. Is that even a question? Don't you know what those marks are?" I shook my head, still clueless. She leaned in close and whispered something into my ear, something that turned my cheeks bright red. I was stunned, embarrassed. Layla laughed out loud and said, "You silly girl, it's only been a month since Pi's wedding. This is normal. My sister explained it to me when I first noticed them. Her words were a revelation. They answered so many of the questions that had been circling in my young, curious mind. Layla had unknowingly filled a gap in my understanding. But then, a new thought struck me like lightning. Ami and Abba have been married for 16 years. And yet, Abba still treats Ami like that? With so much love, so much passion? It left me speechless. And quietly, deep inside my heart, I prayed, Ya Allah, grant me a husband who loves me the way my Abba loves my Ami. For a while, I just sat there watching Layla's Bobby. Her hair was dripping wet, her clothes clinging to her back. She wasn't particularly beautiful, but there was a strange glow on her face, as if she had discovered some hidden treasure. And I knew exactly what that glow meant. After spending some time with my friend, I returned home. Abba was sitting in the living room, visibly angry. The moment he saw me, he snapped, "Don't you dare step outside this house again." His tone startled me. I had been to Layla's house many times before, and it had never been a problem. But this time, Abba said firmly, "You're a grown girl now. There's no need for you to be out and about, and I've already told you not to go to Layla's house anymore." I tried to reason with him. Layla's brothers are like my own. We've grown up together. There's nothing, but before I could finish, Abba glared at me. "Don't talk back. Just understand what I'm telling you. From now on, you won't visit that house. That girl has brothers. What if people start gossiping about you too? Do you want to disgrace this family?" Then he got up and walked into his room. Ami looked at me with tearful eyes. I understood instantly. He must have already scolded her before I arrived. A wave of guilt washed over me. Because of me, Ami had been humiliated. I felt ashamed, even though I had done nothing wrong. I went to her gently, wrapped my arms around her neck, and said sweetly, "Abba loves us a lot. If he scolds us, it's only because he cares." But deep inside, I kept wondering, why had Abba suddenly become so strict? What was so wrong with me visiting Layla's house? I had never even looked at a boy that way, never stepped out of line. Why was he suddenly so suspicious of me? Later, Ami softly said, "It's not your fault. It's mine. And now we both have to live with the consequences." I didn't understand what she meant. She wiped her tears and quietly went back to her chores. But slowly, piece by piece, the truth began to make sense. Ami had married Abba by choice. They had lived in the same neighborhood. Abba used to come to her street often. And now that I was growing up, he was projecting his own past onto me. His words weren't just about me, they were about Ami too. And that's what hurt her the most. It was becoming clearer. Abba had once run away with Ami and caused great shame to his own family. And now, as I came of age, he feared that I would repeat the same story. But the truth was, I didn't even have the courage to think about such things, let alone act on them. Still, I locked myself inside my own home. I stopped going to school. I stopped visiting my friend. I didn't even ask for tuition because of me. But one thing kept bothering me. How could someone who loved Ami so deeply say things that clearly broke her heart? And as I stayed home all the time, my eyes began to see more. I began to notice the subtleties in the house, the patterns, the moments, the silence. Slowly, I started realizing that what I had been foolishly calling love between my parents, maybe it wasn't love at all. The way Abba clung to Ami and the way Ami flinched, uncomfortable when he was near, it started to make sense in a different way. Then one night, I did something I never imagined I would do. Curious and disturbed, I quietly crept to the window of their room and tried to peek through the edge. I needed to see for myself what really happened behind that closed door. What I saw shook me to my core. Abba was holding a stick. He was beating Ami, not screaming, not yelling, but hitting her methodically, his movements full of fury. And Ami, her voice choked, her body trembling. She could only manage to whisper, "Please, stop. Please." My blood ran cold. All this time, I thought they were in love. I thought their closeness was romantic, sacred, special. But what I had just seen was not love. It was cruelty, and it broke something inside me forever. She was covering her mouth with her hands, trying to muffle her screams, while Abba kept beating her like a man possessed. The sight shook me to my core. I had never imagined something like this, not even in the darkest corners of my mind. Seeing Ami silently endure such violence from Abba broke something inside me. I couldn't bear it any longer. I began pounding on the door of their room with all my strength. After a few moments, Abba opened the door, breathing heavily, sweat glistening on his forehead. I rushed past him and ran to Ami. She was lying on the bed, nearly unconscious, her body limp from the beatings. I wrapped my arms around her and burst into uncontrollable sobs. Abba, still seething, snapped, "What do you think you're doing? What are you doing here in the middle of the night?" I faced him through my tears and shouted, "I know now. I've seen what you do to Ami. All this time I thought you loved her, that you cared for her, but tonight I saw the truth. You're not loving, you're cruel." Abba's face hardened. "I'm not cruel," he hissed. "Your mother is a filthy woman. I don't trust her, not for a second. That's why I'm strict with you too, because she can't raise a daughter properly. A woman who shamed her own father's honor can't raise a decent girl." I stared at him in stunned disbelief. I couldn't believe the words that had come out of his mouth. Ami was sobbing uncontrollably now. Having me on her side had finally broken down her last barrier of endurance. Abba, furious, grabbed his phone, shoved it in his pocket, and stormed out of the house. "Ask your mother who she really is," he shouted. "You'll find out soon enough." After he left, Ami kept crying for a long time. When she finally calmed down, I gently asked, "Ami, why did Abba do this to you? Didn't you both fall in love and get married?" Ami looked at me with exhausted eyes and slowly nodded. "Before marriage, your Abba was madly in love with me. I was young and naive. I believed his promises. For him, I left everything: my home, my parents, my pride. We moved to this city, far from my family. But not long after our marriage, he began to suspect me. He'd come home from work at random times, searching the house as if I was hiding someone." Her voice trembled. "He would ask all kinds of awful questions. Does someone follow you? Are you meeting someone behind my back?" I was tired of it. I told him, "If you don't trust me, then lock the door from outside when you leave." And he did. I used to be locked inside for hours. "When you were born," she continued, "things got a little better. He stopped locking me up, but the suspicion never left him. He wouldn't let me go anywhere alone. He would cling to me wherever I went. If I even mentioned going out, he'd bombard me with questions. 'Are you meeting someone? Do you have a lover now?' Her voice cracked. Those questions turned my life into hell, but I had nowhere to go. I had given everything up for this man. And now I had a daughter. I had you. I had to stay for your sake. I tried to keep this marriage alive, but then something changed. Someone introduced your father to drugs. Every night he'd come home and mix something into his milk, and once he drank it, he'd turn into someone else. He started beating me regularly. He'd slap me, burn me with cigarettes, bruise my body until I was covered in blue marks. Sometimes he used sticks. Sometimes he used metal pipes. I bore every wound in silence. I didn't want your upbringing to suffer. I didn't want you to be affected by any of it. I tried to protect you, even if it meant letting my soul be shattered every night." Her hands trembled as she reached for mine. "But the truth," she said with a bitter smile, "can only stay hidden for so long. Tonight, you saw it with your own eyes. You've seen the way your father talks to me, the way he looks at me. You know what he thinks of me, don't you?" Ami's voice trembled. "Do you know what my mistake was, my daughter? That I left my parents and put my trust in a stranger? That's the sin I've been paying for ever since. I could never earn a place in your father's heart. He never trusted me. He never gave me the respect I deserved." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "He thinks I have no character because I betrayed my parents. That's what he truly believes." And with that, Ami broke down in sobs. I just sat there frozen, holding her tightly in my arms, listening in stunned silence. The love I had believed in all these years was nothing but doubt. What I thought was care was actually violence. My eyes had been shut this whole time. I looked at Ami and said, "Why do you still stay with a man who has never given you anything? Who forced you to abandon everyone you ever loved and still treats you like this?" Ami held my hand and replied, "As long as you are with me, I can't leave him. But once I see you married and sent off with respect, then I will think about my life." I shook my head. "Ami, you've spent your whole life worrying about me and destroyed yourself in the process. I'm not ready for marriage. I'm not even of age. And I don't want to get married right now. The better choice is for both of us to choose a new path for ourselves." Ami finally understood. She agreed with me. So we packed our bags together. When Abba returned the next morning, we told him our decision. He was stunned. He stammered, tried to find the right words, and finally said, "There's no need to go anywhere." Because the truth was, he had no one but us. But I stood firm. "After everything you've done to Ami, we can't stay here. We just can't." I reminded him of all the things he had done, all the cruelty. He fell silent. He didn't want us to leave. Deep down, I believe he was afraid of being alone. But Ami, she still loved him. Deeply. And maybe that love made her believe he deserved one last chance. So we stayed. But this time something changed. Abba truly changed. He stopped hurting Ami. He started helping around the house. Bit by bit, he began acting like the husband she had once fallen in love with. Within days, the change was visible. He had realized that if we ever left, he would be left with nothing. Today, we still live under one roof. I don't let Abba drink that powdered substance anymore. I watch over him, and that's why. Ami's sobs have finally stopped. The nights are quiet now, and I want to say something to every girl out there who thinks she's in love with a man who is not her mahram. Never leave your parents' home for a man. Never betray your mother and father. Because one day, the very reason you thought was love could be used to destroy you. A man may use it to shame you, humiliate you, torture you, just because you dared to step outside the boundaries. Never let yourself fall in someone else's eyes. Keep your worth high. If someone truly loves you, he will fight to marry you the right way, with honor and respect. That is the sign of real love.